Welcome to the Iowa Ag Podcast, where we talk about the nuanced topics of agriculture and try to bridge the urban-rural divide. I'm your host, David Geiger, here at the Jethro's Barbecue Studio. Happy to be here to start up a conversation about important issues on and off the farm. This is the Iowa Ag Podcast. Welcome to the Iowa Ag Podcast here at the Jethro's Barbecue Studio. I'm David Geiger, your host. Thanks for joining. We're here to talk about some of the important issues going on in agriculture. And to do so, we have with us April Hemis, is a farmer in central Iowa. And April and I have had conversations before, but thank you so much for joining us on the Iowa Ag Podcast,
You bet.
April.
Glad to be here.
Absolutely. And April, let's just start off by going over the season because harvest is nearly wrapped off. Are you done with your harvest?
Yes, I got done a couple weeks ago. Finished up with my combine karaoke girls.
Absolutely.
And,
I saw that on LinkedIn. Yes,
well, yes,
I saw that.
Yeah,
Yep.
this is the first year I thought, LinkedIn audience doesn't get that. And I get the most reaction out of that. So, but no, we have fun. There's 4 of us women getting my combine cab, and a couple of them are politicians. So we talk politics. This year we didn't that much, though. We just sang the songs and then went to Sweeney's house and drank wine and ate ribs. Not Jethro's ribs, but they were pretty
evening.
Darn good. Yes.
Not Jethro's, but good ribs too.
Yes.
You have equally good ribs. That's great. Most folks are saying that they are more or less wrapped up.
Yep.
They may say they have some soybeans left over, or maybe they'll have like a test plot of corn or seed corn. But for the most part, corn's been done for a couple weeks. Soybeans, not much left. What is that first reaction now that you're seeing most folks wrap up? You're seeing empty fields, and as you look around,
we have a lot of text messages going back and forth with soybeans, and I'm on Iowa corn. So I'm getting information from everybody, and then you get StoneX and a lot of industry guesses, and farmers always think industry's way too high. I'm like, yeah, I think this one they got kind of right. So I had the best bean yield I've ever had, which
really
shocked me. 67 I averaged over everything.
Wow.
And that is kind of the norm in north central Iowa. I'm from Franklin County. And my average for corn will be I think it was 227, but between 220 and 230. Wow,
that's really solid too.
Yeah. So I was very, very happy. And that kind of encompasses everything. But beans are pretty good. Corn is unbelievably, like, I've heard 160s to 270s.
Yeah.
Anywhere
so
in
much
between.
Variation.
Yeah.
All mostly southern rust issues too.
Right. Southern rust. We had the second wettest July on record in Franklin County. And I just talked to a guy from Hamilton County, and he had 160s. 170s, because they were just way too wet early. So, there's huge variation all over, but I said, well, okay, you take, 170 to 270, and 220 kind of hits the middle here, people.
That's kind of averages. Yeah.
So for all in all, a really, a pretty good year for what we had to go through. And yes, I put fungicide on everything, which didn't really make a difference on beans. I left Iowa Soybean did a fungicide test plot with drones on one of my fields.
Interesting.
And so I didn't do 80 acres of fungicide on that field. Didn't make any difference.
Oh, wow.
But I could see where they did the drone test, and I don't know what they did. It was dark green, light green, dark green. So I went, okay, can't wait to see what that is, So the varieties really made a difference in soybeans and corn. It was definitely disease.
Yep.
100%. So a good year all in all, trying to yield my way out of poverty. Is that a polite way to put that?
Farming is a game of margins nowadays.
And it is. And that's why I said we're just money movers. And somebody said a good line the other day, which probably regular people don't know or get, but we don't always make money every year. That's farming.
Yep.
And that's what I always tell people. How would you like to go to work, do the best job you've ever done, and somebody's going to say, I think I'm going to cut your pay in half, even though you did a fantastic job. So many things are out of our control, and farmers just deal with them. And as my husband calls me, the eternal optimist. You farmers, I don't get you. You're the eternal optimist. Well, we have to be. 40 years in the business, my 40th year farming. So I'm pretty proud of that.
There is a little bit of of faith that's just always involved when you put the seeds in the ground.
100%.
You're like, well, it's going to grow.
Here we go.
I'm going to trust that process works.
Bring it. Whatever you got. Come on, let's go. So,
that kind of brings up a different topic, but on a similar edge, I think when the season started, there was the first estimates that came out from the USDA was saying Iowa average was going to be somewhere in the realm of, it went under 200. It was like 199 or 198 bushel.
Wasn't that what it was last year? It was.
I think it was a little over 200 last year.
Little over 200, yeah.
And then soybeans was, I think, at 49, maybe 50, because I've seen it as high as 51 and a half or so on the averages. But now we don't have those USDA tests because of the government shutdown that we've had for the last month and a half or so. And how does that affect your decision making on the farm as you're waiting for, well, what are some official numbers versus what are some private numbers?
Right. And I've watched a couple of things where they've talked about that. First of all, farmers, we put it in the bin, wait till all this gets sorted out. A lot of them are trying to find bin space, or I had to take a lot of soybeans to the local co-op because I didn't have space for it. So, there's that. And then what can we do to not rely on these numbers all the time? So I just came from a soybean policy, what can we be looking at? And I said, does Iowa do any estimates on their own, not tied to NASS? And they said, that's funny you should say that. Extension was just talking about that because Extension puts numbers out, but a lot of those guys are retiring or through cuts and things like that. So do we really need to look forward to something like that? But the government reports are nice. No farmer ever believes them. I'm going to put that out there. It's more for the marketing people, and that's what they trade off of. And then the shock of last year where every farmer knew we didn't have the yield in corn. And then I think it was the January number finally came out, and then we're like, yeah, we've been telling you this all along.
We all told you.
So then that's when the market spiked a little higher. So
it's when the algorithms are kind of grasping on things instead of people.
Well, and then seriously look at it through cuts and what they're expecting NASS to do and USDA with, I don't know, half the people, 3/4 of the people. That's asking a lot of it. And then now they've come and said, you will put a report out, next week or 2 weeks? Something like that. Yeah. With what? Where are they going to get their information? What are they going to do?
They rely on surveys. So they are relying on people to A, respond, and B, be truthful in their response.
Well, and I also say, and I pushed this in some other boards I said, when they said, well, the survey says, I go, how did you do the survey? Unless you email it to me. If it's a phone, I'm not going to answer it. No, I've numbers I don't know blocked. Leave me a message if you want to talk to me. So unless it's email, so a lot of these surveys really need to get updated.
Yes, and I don't mean to like lower trust in them, because at the end of the year, normally they're pretty close to what the actual data that comes out of, here's what we sold, here's what bins got across the country.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the process is difficult when there is sometimes distrust in those reports and what they do, and also how much information they share or allow to be shared.
Transparency has become huge.
That's so well. And
everything.
Right. And I think of that, too, because farmers are a business, right? You're a private business, and a difficulty with that is so much of your information is just out there.
Yeah.
And how are you supposed to operate in a market that's already limited when it comes to free markets because of stabilization measures governments take to make sure food costs more or less the same, doesn't have too heavy shifts, right? And so you're already dealing with the difficulties that are involved with that process. But then on top of it, it's like, well, now, my neighbors know this much and my community knows this much. And when you can say, oh, they farm this many acres and they have this many bushels per acre, and this is their income.
Yeah,
there you go. That's how much you're making.
Yeah. So I just had a group of Argentina, people, they were more technical people. They were looking at like creating the new field view for Argentina, and they asked me, how do I make decisions? What's your decision making process like? How do you decide on what to plant? And I go, well, number one is talking to my neighbors and what they've talked to, what they're doing, and they were shocked that farmers shared information. You mean? I said, well, yeah, at the coffee shop, but we always know the guy who lies 10 bushel an acre, and the guy and the one who's pretty close. You can figure that all out. But yeah, we share what number did best, what one might have gone down, or this year not stock, but yeah, corn stock issues, which I had to get in early and get a couple numbers out. So, we share. And in fact, I just had a neighbor call, okay, this is what went really good for me this year. Right. So,
well, sometimes you'll have fields that are right next to each other. So their knowledge about that field right next to it will be super helpful for you. 100%.
So, that's when I said that, and then my dealers will know what did good in our area. So, but transparency 100%. And I know we're trying to bring a lot more of that into business and everything else, but the more these businesses combine, the less they want to share. Is that a polite way to put that? Fertilizer people, are you listening to me?
We can talk about the fertilizer people in a moment, but I didn't want to escape this tangent because it popped into my head, and I wanted to talk to a farmer about it specifically, and that is why, with all the access of technology and all of the satellites that are rolling around,
why don't we
just use satellites to have NAS tell us, this is what our estimation for bushels is?
Well, that
could be real time almost.
Well, it would be real time, but I get that vegetation on my field view maps, and I'm like, that field isn't dead, so I go out there and there might be an issue there, and you can't, it's only as good as the input. We were talking about that with AI and how AI is coming into farming. I said AI has been in farming for a while, but
it's one of the frontiers of
AI. 100%. I said, but the information I give that AI app, whatever you use, the information I get back is only as good as what I put into it. This is what I want. This is what I planted. You have to know all the stuff. So, but I really look forward to that part of it. Boy, I'm really all over the board today. Sorry.
No, I'm joining you. I'm going. I'm sending you in all sorts of directions because
That's
essentially what I'm hearing is the technology still needs improvement for something like that.
It does, and I'm thankful for what we have. Because Grandpa started farming with 3 horses. And live long enough to see auto steer. That's one lifetime.
Wow.
So I really look forward to what I've doubled the yield in my 40 years on the farm. So, think of that. The yields have doubled. I just was talking to a neighbor, said my bin setup is 20 years old, which I swear they just built it last year. But, it's 20 years old and we built it for 200 bushel corn. Well, that's not what we're getting anymore. So there's a lot of those conversations going around. Yep. And isn't that great?
It's great. It's
I remember
awesome.
when, if I didn't get 185, it was a crop failure. And then now we're like, when did 200 bushel an acre become a crop failure? Because now it just keeps stepping up. So
that's the cool part about agriculture is it is often one of the biggest motivators and biggest frontiers of new technology being developed. I even think of just something as simple as the fridge that we get to enjoy preserved foods with was originally made to preserve agriculture products to get even to the city. It wasn't personalized fridges that was initially invented.
No, it was cars.
And it was the train carts. Yeah, it was the train carts. Yeah.
Get that lettuce to Chicago in the middle of winter.
And it took a long time. I was actually learning about this the other day. It took a long time for people to even trust it because people didn't know what temperatures to keep at it. So most of the preserved foods that you did tasted bad or tasted sour or gross. And so it took some really detailed science on figuring out what are the right temperatures for the right products and moving on from there and then building public support. And that was all a frontier of agriculture.
And that all goes back to sharing what we do with the consumer. Because so many of the consumers now, maybe their grandpa or grandparents lived on a farm, but they have no ties to it now. So they have no clue what we do. And being able to share that, that's why I love doing podcasts like this, because sharing what I do with the general public or with people, really helps to get the word out there on how we farm these days,
Yeah. And another aspect of technology is systems, right? It's not just developing the latest computer, but also developing a system that is tried and true and is more efficient than the last system.
Yep.
And I think of that being, they like to make the commonality or the saying of war is logistics, right? I like to say agriculture is logistics, right?
Yes.
I think that's a big part of it. Like that's what
my
agriculture is.
I had John Deere in my cab. They were trying to get people from Apex, the software base, to my op center, and how will you use this, and what do you really need? And they're in my combine cab, and they said, "What do you really need? What would help you the most?" And I said, "Logistics."
Mm-hmm.
I'm out here in the morning. I have to decide, am I going to finish this field? Where am I going next? Is that field ready? I'm going to need a ride. I'm going to need a lot of rides to move everything over to the next field. And then how do you, it's knowing where I'm going to go, what I'm going to do. So, yeah, I tell kids all the time, go into logistics.
Yes.
You'll make a living. You'll be fine.
Yeah, it will be a stable business to be in. And I think of a couple weeks ago, we had a guest here, and she was talking about diversifying, giving farmers more options and the ability to choose different things, right? If you were to say, I don't want to grow corn this year, you don't really have another choice, right?
I said that to my husband 35 years ago when we got married. He goes, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? And I said, I can raise anything on my farm. I have to have a market to get it to that's economically viable. And in Iowa, that's corn and beans.
Yep.
I have an ethanol plant, a processing plant 10 miles away, a Cargill crushing facility, and a biodiesel plant 10 miles away. I'm not going to grow sugar beets that have to go to North Dakota.
We can grow the junk out of industrial hemp here.
Yes.
But there is nowhere for it to go. It can go. There is no location. There's no place to send it to, even if you only farmed a few acres of it.
Trust me, I know that because Hampton used to have an industrial hemp plant, so it's all over in the ditches and everywhere. And that was in I think World War II, maybe. I don't know.
Right.
A long time ago, and it's still that
was such a huge push to get it passed to legalize industrial hemp, and people tried it here in Iowa. Never managed to get it anywhere because there was nowhere system built for them.
Right.
And so that kind of limits farmer choice a little bit.
Well, it does. And then especially times like this where we're not making money, as I explain it, our commodity prices with inflation have not kept up with our inputs.
Right.
So it's not that our commodity prices are low. It's just that our inputs are so high that we're not. I mean, I did a ROI or whatever, what I was going to make next year and put some of my input prices. I'm going to make 34 cents a bushel on corn. So you think maybe I better find some places to cut out a little bit. I don't know, but I'm not going to cut out. Purdue did a survey and they said people aren't looking to cut nitrogen, what they're raising. Mm-hmm. It's maybe family expenses or things like that, but maybe a little less P&K, but they're not cutting it out altogether.
Right.
Because that's what we do for a living. So
it is. And, maybe this is, I guess, maybe too deep of a question, but it's also something to look at more in a solution-based standpoint of, do you feel like folks in Iowa and agriculture have kind of put their eggs into one basket and kind of just expect that to roll out? And if so, what would be a way that we could move towards having more options?
Right. I totally agree with you. I have an organic neighbor. But he has to go to
That's
Albert
hard.
Lee.
Organic is hard.
Oh, I know. It's hard farming next to it, too. Although I told him when I sent the fungicide plane out, I just waited for a west wind so it would blow on him. And he laughed.
I thought you were going to say, let me know whenever you're putting any of that organic fertilizer out there or the organic pesticides. I don't want to be anywhere near the organic pesticides.
Right, because that's what I tell. But there's so much. The information doesn't get out there on how they farm, you know. Or
most people say there's no pesticides on organic agriculture, which is not true.
No, and I say he goes over his ground 5 times more than I do. So do you want soil loss with erosion or I no-till and don't till my ground at all?
Right.
And they go, well, no one ever explained it to me like that. And I said, it's a trade-off. If you put something in the ground, if you raise it, you're going to disturb something.
Right.
So what do you want? I don't care if you eat all organic. That's up to you if you want to pay 3 times what I do. And so
personal choice. You get to make your own decisions in this life. You get to buy premium products if you want to buy premium products.
And that's what? And I said this to a Eastern European sounding taxi cab driver once who poo-pooed me because I was not organic. And I go, well, we're in America, and at least we have a choice here.
Right. Right.
I got the look.
Well,
But
it's
true.
I don't want to deviate too deep into organic, but if you look at the actual practices involved, it is not as efficient and it is not as healthy as people think it will be, both for the soil and even for the crops and the area itself. Because what are ways that you get rid of the ways that destroy your plants? It'd be the herbicides and pesticides. How do you replace those? Mm-hmm. You use either the organic stuff, which is difficult. You have to till.
Yep.
And you have to rely on winter kill. Mm-hmm. And there's probably more, but those are the 3 big ones that stick in my head. Yeah. They have to fight that so hard, which is why it is at a premium.
Right. And once he said to me, if I don't get 3 times what you're getting, it's not I'm not making money.
It's not financially viable.
Right. So he borrows my wagons. We get along great.
Of course,
actually,
why not?
We really do.
They're doing a specialty business, right?
Right.
And honestly, they're not even necessarily a competitor to you.
No.
They have a completely different.
No, not at all. And we get along just fine. And I've never killed one of his crops, thank God. But,
good neighbor. Good neighbor.
Yes, and I even when they had the big to do about Extend. And I said, you guys just don't spray stupid. You should put that on a button, But I said, when I would go on and say, I farm next to somebody organic, and I've used Extend since it was out. When they worried about the drift and the vapor and all that.
Yep.
And I said, you just pay attention to what's out there, and and the conditions. And
this is the 2,4-D product.
Yes. So yeah.
Anyway, it's a little bit of a tangent, but we like doing those types of things. That's part of the fun of conversation and being able to talk about this. Yeah. But moving back to the logistics side, something that is taking place this year was, in fact, very well known, and we've talked about it before, was China's decision to essentially not buy any soybeans in retaliation to some tariffs that were going on. Right. Well, there was some decisions recently and some trade agreements that were verbally affirmed that China would again start buying beans. This year would be half the amount it was normally last year, and then they agreed to go to a little under the full amount that they tend to have year over year. But something I'm thinking about before we go over that topic is, where are all the beans that normally went to China right now? Are they sitting in bins? Is that clogging up the logistics system?
And why is the price so high? And what is
China going to be able to say, well, we ordered a whole bunch of soybeans from the U.S.,
but I can't get it.
But I can't get it. So, I mean, it's really on the U.S. farmer. They couldn't get it to us in time.
Well, China's China, and they're going to do everything to save face. That's their big thing. So somehow they're going to play it as a win for them, this whole thing. The China market really isn't, the people who complain about it not being as much as it was, it's not coming back the way it was. They're feeding less hogs. They have less people. Since COVID, they've changed a lot of things. And quite honestly, they can shut down whenever they want to. They can cheek and snap his fingers and it's done.
It's basically a lever, right? Like pull the lever,
So, right. And so I'm encouraged they came up with this. The market's saying, until we got a signed deal and we force them to do something. And a lot of analysts think they're buying behind the scenes, which anytime it says unknown destination, we figure it's China. So, but
where else?
Right. But as U.S. soy, we have also relied a lot on that. When over half of our exported soybeans go to one country. And I've said in interviews, I feel sorry for Brazil. Well, if they get mad at Brazil. But they're putting a lot of money in their infrastructure in Brazil.
They're investing. They're investors.
That's what they're counting on. So, so be it. But what we've done, I used to be on the United Soybean Board, the checkoff board, and we've invested a lot, and we need to do a lot more in our domestic demand, And with biodiesel, renewable diesel, feed inputs with poultry, and so we need to really up the meal and oil use in the U.S. Which is what we've done a lot of. PFAS is a big thing. We were just talking about this. The new firefighting foam the firefighting foam is filled with PFAS. Well, now we have one made out of soybean meal.
Yep. Soybean meal based
and so
firefighting
so now they're trying to get that out there. So there's lots of new uses. Does that handle the whole problem?
I'm waiting for soybean asphalt. I want more soybean asphalt. Well, I don't know why that's not being put on every Iowa road.
I 100% agree with you. I would tell that story because it's an ingredient that gets mixed in the asphalt and makes it last longer, and it's replacing a petroleum. And how that came about was Iowa Soybean went to Iowa State and said, we have this howlick, well, what can you do with it? And so they came up with that, and then the state put money in, the contractors put money in, so you have independent private business, the state, Iowa State, soybean farmers, all coming together to promote this. It's proven it works better. I agree with you. Listen here, state DOT. You need to be using this.
Let's do it.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to the diversification question, right? Because if you don't have the ability to diversify what you're growing because there's no system in place that allows you to do that at a way where you can actually make money.
Right.
You have to diversify what your product that you do make can become.
Yeah. And I know soybeans is like, I don't know, with over 1,000 different products. I know corn, same thing. Of course, they always like to one-up us. Like, well, we have 3,000 April, whatever. So, but both corn and soy have used a lot of their farmer dollars they get in checkoff dollars to really look at rather than ethanol, biodiesel, things like that. They're really up in their game to do that, to diversify, whether it's plastics or, concrete coating. So, shingles, coating for shingles. I know that's one of them too, to make them last longer. So, there's lots of opportunities out there. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Alongside the China question that you have, I think of just the impacts that tariffs and the impacts that policy has had upon farmers and what that does. Looking at just tariffs and what's going on the farm, how do you prepare for the future? How do you move into the season of planning and choosing your input prices, which, once again, we should probably get to that in a bit too, but choosing those input prices and choosing those field decisions that you're making over winter?
So
how are you getting to that?
I got asked this when we had the 2012 drought. I went and spoke to the House and Senate Ag Committee, and they had a bunch of people on there, and I said, "Hey, we could have." Are you going all drought corn, all drought? And I go, "We could have the wettest spring we've ever had next spring." I don't know.
Yep.
So we always say we prepare for the worst and hope for the best. So, I will talk to fellow farmers, what worked good for you, and get that all going. As far as rotation, that's a big thing this year.
Yep.
And it was last year. In north central Iowa, we did not change a lot. And all my people I buy from said, no, I'm not seeing a whole lot more soybeans, or a little bit more soybeans last year, I think, and that surprised people in the national. They were surprised. I said, "We're Iowa. We grow corn.
Yeah, we're
not going to grow more soybeans." And Illinois cheats because they can double crop, so they can say they're number one in soybeans. We do better, and but
I'll have to say that next time I talk about that, because I remember when I first started doing farm reporting, Iowa was number one in soybeans.
We were number one, yeah, and then they always, and I actually found out what a wheat bean was. I'm like, what is a wheat? Finally, I go wheat bean, because the guy goes, well, I'm on wheat beans now, and I'm like. Finally, I go,
wheat bean rotation.
Is that the beans you plant after you harvest the wheat? And they go, yeah. And I go, it was so funny because it was, I call it a Brady Bunch meeting, a Zoom meeting, and the northern people were like going, thank you, April. I didn't know what that was. And the southern people are like, you didn't? So
when you said it fast, I'm like, is this like an up dog situation? Is they're trying to prank me here?
No, I swear to God, it's a thing. Wheat beans. Yes. So that's how they cheat. That's what I say.
Right.
I don't have the opportunity to raise beans on, a field in the same year. But anyway, so how do I make decisions? Talk to other people. I'm not going to change my rotation because, number one, I'm 60-40 corn. I hate corn on corn. It's higher input costs.
Yep.
It's less yield usually, although the last 2 years, my best fields have been my corn on corn.
Really?
Yeah, and I just talked to the guy from Hamilton County, said the same thing. My best field was corn on corn. I go, I don't know if we just fertilized it more or whatever. I did side dress that field.
You just could have been in that perfect spot where it just got exactly the amount of rain it needed, and
you never know.
Yeah.
But yeah, or the right variety.
Right variety and the right
might
soils.
Been a lot more, especially this year with the rust. So yeah, so no one I've talked to is switching anything up very much. And we were very lucky in our area to have good yields, so we're not going into it trying to cut back a lot, other than not a lot of new equipment unless we absolutely have to have it.
Yep.
So, the old Titan, batten down the hatches, boys.
Yeah.
Storms are coming because next year doesn't look any better.
And, before I touch on the topic of what you just mentioned on farm equipment and some of those other aspects of farming, input prices, there was, that's kind of become a bigger topic. A couple years ago, huge topic. It's consistent ever since the pandemic. It has been, while I think it tripled during the pandemic on fertilizer specifically, never went down. Yeah. And it's, it's kind of like our grocery store prices. I think it just went increased, and the products became smaller, and they're still the same price.
Yeah.
But when you're my
it's
own little,
true.
just
little rant
look at me adding my own little grievance into the conversation.
It's true though.
But when it comes to some of those input costs, we just had a hearing the other day in Washington D.C. talking about how
Grassley headed that up.
the Senate Judiciary Committee talking about how there has been potentially too much consolidation going on, and there's not enough transparency in what's going on price wise. This is a relationship situation when you get down to local farmers, local fields. You have your own dealer, you know them, you have relationships with them.
Well, what we know, it's not their fault.
Yeah,
but they get the brunt. Like, okay, my fertilizer and chemical guy, I call him my farming husband because my husband doesn't farm at all. And he called and told me the nitrogen price, and I screamed. I was not very happy.
Right.
I said, that's almost doubled in the past 3 years.
Yep.
I'm like, this is ridiculous.
Yep.
And he chose to text me the P&K price, so he's getting smarter in his old age. And
that's really funny.
No, he really did.
Yeah, he's like, let me get those P&K numbers for you here quick.
That's exactly what he said.
Boop. Text. What's this?
No, he didn't even call me. He's like, here's
you try
your,
to dial his number, and it's like, so and so is not available.
That's right. I'm not giving out any information to April Hemis about P&K, potash and phosphate. So, that he goes. You think when he gave me the nitrogen quote, he said, you think this is bad, wait till you hear the P&K numbers. And I went, and that's why he texted them to me. Mm-hmm. So the conversations, the things that farmers are looking at is they're paying these big wigs at these companies, bonuses, huge, making the most money they've ever had, all this, and yet their prices are not coming down,
Right.
So, okay, it's capitalism, I get it.
Yeah.
And they know that anything coming out of Morocco or was Canada, with potash comes out of Canada. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that they took that off, but they know it's still going to be tariffed. So the tariffs, when they were there or whatever, why would they lower their price if it was my, phosphate is made in Florida? Well, they're not going to lower their price if they know the competition's going to get tariffed and everybody's going to have to pay more.
Yeah.
So that's America, babe.
It is. And I mean, capitalism, a big core aspect of it is competition, right? And if there's no competition,
100%.
and that's where you have kind of that, cognitive dissonance on how do you have competition, but also not have government involvement, right? Like it's a relationship that somehow you have to balance on whatever political platform you want to be on.
It goes way back, doesn't it?
Yeah, it goes way back.
Yeah.
And I think of that as another point on the discussion plate that I wanted to get, and then I'll let you go here in a moment. But I did want to talk about the relationship with, I guess, the tech side, the actual hardware and many of the agribusinesses you have, because as farmer economies decline and as farmer income declines, you see a bit of decline as well within agribusinesses. And how does that, and how have you seen that affect you over the years, watching that ebb and flow where they have these massive hirings and then they have these layoffs, and then you kind of go back and forth? And how does that impact you as a farmer when you look at the prices of the products that they produce that you need?
Right. I go way back to having a dealership on every corner, and way back to having my grandfather go to a farm sale and buy something. Well, it was going too cheap. I couldn't let it go. Grandpa, the nearest dealer's 30 miles away. Where are we going for parts? Well, it was just going too cheap. So that's, but that, I mean, he farmed through the Depression, and that was that they did whatever they did to survive through those times, And so when the technology started playing a bigger role in my implements, I said, I got to pick something. A plug and play. And my husband worked right next to the John Deere dealership, so it was a pretty easy decision for me.
Yeah.
And so that way. But then it's like, I love Apple products too. Then you're tied to them, and they know it. And then we were just having
they become an actual dealer.
Yes, that's right. Give me more. We were just having this discussion of how much when you click that agree to terms and agreement. Yeah. What are you agreeing to? Are you agreeing to have them share your data with someone else? Are you agreeing? And I said, yeah, like I called and I was having troubles with my ops center, and I said, help me out here. And he goes, okay, well, you did this and that. I can see this in your field. And I go, oh, you don't have any of my information? And he goes, you want my help or not, April? That's what I'm saying. Like,
did you see how many bathroom breaks I took too?
Wow. So he had me over a barrel there because, yes, I did need his help so I could keep going, but the tech has almost become as important as the hardware, So, but I always say when farmers are making money, that is a rural money thing. If we're making money, we're not going to Amazon and buying hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of stuff. We're going to our local people who employ people in Waterloo or wherever, So, it's I always say it's never a bad thing when farmers are making money. Yeah. So, but what the hot market, well, I just listened to a podcast about this when I get a little bored in the tractor. But the hot market is still that pre-DEF market, because that's what I have, a couple DEF things. But anyway, that's the fluid we have to put it in to make it happy for the environment there. Is that a nice consumer way to put that?
Yes.
Okay. And anyway, that's the older stuff is still got really hot market. And it's that 1 to 2 to 3, those high ticket items that really they're choosing to fix. But geez, even fixes are 20, 30,000, minimum these days. I
mean, I like to shock my non-farm friends by saying, how much do you think that tire costs?
I can tell you. I had 2 deer antlers go through this year. Well, and actually, the Iowa Renewable Fuels does a great thing and brings the staffers in from the Ag Senate and House Committee to Iowa. And they've been to my farm several times.
Was that over the fair?
They could have this year.
They had some. I remember seeing them over at the fairgrounds, and then they visited some farms and went to the fair.
So they do that like maybe every other year, every 3 years on my farm. And I do a corn, soybeans, technology, and I do talk conservation. So we have 4 different things, and then we feed them. So I had the cattlemen come and grill them ribeyes, and I got them bougie beer, foofy beer, and all they drank was Busch Light because they heard that's what Iowa drinks. Anyway, boy, that was a side. I just went, what? You guys are crazy. So, but they saw the See and Spray sprayer that John Deere makes.
Yeah.
And they had brought it out to my farm. My tech guy brought it out, explained it to him, and then they came to the ones that came to me afterwards in conservation. I had them go in my 50,000 bushel grain bin. It was empty. I go, how many people even farm? Farmers get to go in them, but not. So anyway,
it's not common. Most people don't even know what they are.
Amazed at
Yeah.
Anyway, I said, yeah, how'd you like that See and Spray sprayer? Oh well, that was. I said, do you tell you how much it cost? Yeah, it was like $900,000, right?
Yep.
I said, guess how long I have to pay for that? 20 years, 30 years. And I said, no, 5.
5 years.
And when I put up 5, I said,
it's
if
like
you
a car.
have a nice banker, 8, maybe 8. And they couldn't. I said, all we do is move money. Mm-hmm. That's all we do.
Yep.
Yeah, we get but I said, and honestly, that's something I'd use 1 or 2 months out of the year. That's all. And so they were just, that's why I like to explain to people, yes, we have these big expensive things.
Yes.
But we have to pay for them in the meantime.
You do. Yeah, you do. And it just goes to the core concept of farming, which is game of margins. It's, as you said, moving money around. Yep. It is an asset high type of business as opposed to a liquid solvable type of business. Yeah. And that's why it's so wild to me that we have such intense fluctuations with what farmers are getting at the per bushal measure. Right. And that's where they make their money. But they have all of these static prices and you can't just say, well, I'm just not going to sell my corn. Yeah. Or I'm just not going to do this. And then the price goes up and then,
I don't think so.
You can't do that, right?
No, it's just a totally different game. And then we were just having the conversation of the Mormon Church is buying a lot of ground in our county and things like that.
They're one of the biggest land investors in the country, I believe.
Yes. Yeah. And so I use them as an example, but people who are looking to invest in land, if they're worried about the volatile stock market, they want land. Well, they want a guaranteed 12%. Mm-hmm. And these guys who do that for a living say that's not how this works. You might get 4 or 5%.
Right.
I said, but they say you're against people who are buying it for their grandchildren, great grandchildren. It's a long-term investment. They will probably never sell, but and it's not the investment game that these investors are used to.
Right.
So that's, but any more people want something, like they said, they can hold or put their feet on, So that's the game. Luckily, I own all of my own ground, so.
Luckily.
Yeah.
I could ask you 100 more questions, but I think we're about wrapping up this time. Before I let you go, though, I do have one really important question.
Yes.
Very hard-hitting.
Oh, okay. I'm ready for it.
All right.
It's a softball, I can tell.
Yeah. When am I going to be be invited to the Combine karaoke?
Anytime. Anytime. I'll keep you in mind for next year.
Okay, good.
Or even planting. I've done it spraying, planting, I got a buddy seat. You can be my buddy.
The planting playwright.
There we go.
April Hemis is a North Central Iowa farmer, here joining us on the Iowa Ag Podcast. This is the Jethro Barbecue Studio. I'm your host, David Geiger. Feel free to check us out. Look us up online, iowapodcast.com, and make sure to check out my other podcast, the other work I do as well, Farm Here Daily. You can find that at fieldforwardmedia.com. Thank you so much, April, for joining us today.
It was my pleasure. It was great fun.
This is the Iowa Ag Podcast at the Jethro's Barbecue Studio. Thanks again for listening. I'm your host, David Geiger. Please feel free to check out another podcast I do, Farm Here Daily. You can find it on all the main platforms. You can also find me on social media at Geiger Reports. See you next week, everybody.